and we have for you a terrific show. In addition, here I am in Sunset at New York. If you're in New York watching the program live, so you know that this is exactly what it looks like. The sun is setting behind me. Actually, this picture was taken yesterday by my daughter, who was in New York for a couple days. Isn't she a great photographer? Isn't that great? Look at that. It's like a pretty lake near my brother's house. I love it. And I want to thank her for sending me the photo and sharing this beautiful photo with me. And I also want to thank my associate Deb, who does the marketing, and she's dynamite. And she created a little fun logo for us. No longer does Live at 5 have to just scrimp along and what do you call that? Schlepping along. We don't want to be schleppers. We want to look tough, first rate. So we have a cool Live at 5 logo. And also cool on the announcements is if we, for the first time, we got uploaded to YouTube. Yesterday's episode is today on YouTube. And so if you're watching us live, phenomenal. If you're watching us on YouTube, you're probably seeing us one day in arrears, and you could just kind of think back and remind yourself what yesterday was like, and the show will all fall into place. But if you haven't already, take a look at the Jewish Experiences YouTube channel, and there you should subscribe to that channel so you can see all the cool videos and help us get to 100 subscribers so we can get a new URL. And you can see the really cool beginning and end to the show, which again I want to thank Deb for, who's Deb Flomberg, our marketing team here. She's amazing. Hope you all are having a wonderful day. And today's the 7th of the month of Shvat, and we're getting ready to, everybody's thinking about Tu B'Shvat, which is coming up in just a little bit of time next week. And I don't know if that's a big holiday for you. I was thinking of starting to compost, in honor of the holiday. We got to do something for the world, right? I don't know, but that's what we tend to think about when thinking of Tu B'Shvat. Think about the environment. Think about the trees. I want to tell you though what the Talmud says about the trees. A beautiful lesson that the Talmud says. There was one of the great sages. His name was Choni Hamagal. I don't know if you ever met anybody named Choni, but he was named Choni. Hamagal is actually about the circle. There's a famous story about this particular Talmudic sage who was an incredibly righteous individual, and naturally, when a person reaches a degree of greatness, spiritual greatness, Jewish greatness, they're powerful. That's like a powerful thing. They have God's ear, and their prayers are, like make waves in heaven. So it was one time. One of the famous stories about Choni was that it was a drought, a terrible drought in Israel, and they needed rain. And they said, we need somebody to storm the heavens on our behalf and bring a storm down for us for rain. So they went to Choni, because what a gracious person that lived in their generation. They went to Choni. And Choni himself, he said, this is what he did. He drew a circle around himself on the ground, and he stood in a circle. He drew a circle in the dirt. It was dry earth, right? A drought. So he drew a circle in the dirt, and he stood in it. And he prayed, and he said, God Almighty, I'm not going to budge from this circle until you send rain. Now, can you imagine? It's like his colleagues, they said, Choni, isn't that a little bit of a chutzpah? I mean, who speaks to God like that? You're like saying you're making an ultimatum. You're like, you draw a line in the sand and say, God, don't go past this line. I'm not leaving this circle until you make rain. It's a pretty incredible story. And they said, if you weren't, if it would have been anybody else, that would have been so out of line. But you are so close. You're like Hashem's precocious special child. And even if your child is precocious, but if you love your child, they ask for something, they may ask for it wrong, but they're special, so you give it to them. You, Choni, you're that special. And sure enough, it poured on him in no time at all. The rain fell on his head and washed away the circle, and that was the happy ending of the story. Anyway, so I want to tell you now a Tu B'Shvat story about Choni Hamagal. So the same sage was seen at the very end of his life, very late in his life. He was seen planting a tree one day. Now, this tree wasn't just any tree. It was a tree. He was planting a tree, a carob tree. often referred to as Boxer. I don't know what kind of language that is, but it's another way to refer to carob. In English, we just call it carob. But on Tu B'Shvat, we call it Boxer. Why? No idea. Try to eat that stuff raw, and you will have experienced our tradition of Tu B'Shvat. Now, the interesting thing about this tree that Choni was planting from seed was that apparently, and I'm not a botanist, far from it. In fact, my thumbs are not green. But what he was doing was planting this tree, and the tree, the carob tree, apparently does not give fruit for like 70 years. So if you plant a seed of this tree, there's no return on your investment for 70 years or so. And he was an old man. So the fellow that saw him planting this carob tree says to him, "What are you doing? You're an old guy. You're not going to live around for 70 years. You're not going to eat a fruit off this tree." And he gave this beautiful response. He said, "You know what? When I came to the world, I found carob trees to eat. They were obviously planted by someone else. And so I'm going to plant a tree for those who will come after me." And it became a very beautiful, a very well-known, a very, very beautiful idea that, we were given so many great things, and we have a responsibility to likewise to provide for those who will come after us. People before us provided for us, and we're going to do the same. And you know what? It's such a critical attitude. If obviously the fellow who was asking Choni the question was assuming, like, why would you spend your time on something that you yourself aren't going to have any reward from? You're not going to benefit. You're not going to enjoy it. You're here to put on this planet to do for yourself. And this is just not a good investment of your energies, because you're not going to have return. And Choni's response was, "You know what? That's not the way the world works. The world works is that you're here to think about others, provide for others. You're not just doing for yourself. You're doing for others. Others did for me. I'm certainly going to continue, and I'm going to do likewise. I don't need to eat the fruits of my own labor. I want someone to eat the fruits of my labor, but better it should be someone else." And he's planting, and that beautiful attitude has been adopted by and held by the Jewish people all this time, many thousands of years. And it leads me to, it's a little bit of a Tu B'Shvat, because there's the tree celebration, the tree holiday. We'll talk about it more next week, but this is certainly a tree idea, and it leads me to just want to mention the sponsors. I like to thank all those who make the world go round by their generosity, their philanthropy, and their sponsorship. And we have a whole slew of legacy contributors to the Jewish experience. And those are folks that say, I want to leave my mark. And even after I'm not here in this world to continue to donate actively, I want my collected resources to continue to support the community and to support good things. And the Rose Community Foundation has a fantastic life and legacy program, which is ultimately the brainchild of Harold Grinspoon, who is an amazingly philanthropic Jewish community member. He lives in Colorado. He has a house in Aspen, although he's from Boston. And he's given millions and millions of dollars around the Jewish world. And he has this program, Life and Legacy, in which he and through his affiliates like the Rose Community Foundation contribute money to Jewish organizations who are, who need to be supported, and who will go and to speak to donors and ask if they will leave their mark, leave a legacy. It's a little bit like the Choni Amagil principle, even after you're not around, you want to be able to give and to provide for those who come after you. It's a beautiful thing, and I want to thank all of those who have made such commitments to the Jewish experience for a legacy, for to support the community through us, and to. After 120, we will appreciate your gift. Not before, but our prayers after 120, and we're very appreciative. And you're our sponsors. You're the Choni Amagil crew. So thank you to all of you. By the way, I think I wanted to mention a Mazel Tov, a couple of things, a couple other announcements before we dig down into the segments of the show. I wanted the reason that my the photo behind me that my daughter took, she's in New York specifically to go to the wedding of our former colleague who's worked for us for a little over a year, Yael Schweitzer. And Yael's wedding is tonight in New York. So Mazel Tov to the whole Schweitzer family. Actually, Yael was our intrepid admin for the last year and a half. And her mother, Karen Schweitzer, has been with us as the director of our Sunday school for a couple of years. So we love the Schweitzer family, and we're so happy to wish them a mazel tov on Yael's wedding tonight in New York. And my daughter went to go represent the team and took this picture last night. So that's a nice mazel tov. And I also need to catch up on mazel tovs. I missed one that I wanted to mention yesterday, which was on Friday. We actually had a beautiful mazel tov, a beautiful event here at the Jewish Experience. We had a bar mitzvah we celebrated Friday morning here at the Jewish Experience of Isaac Nieder, the son of Brad and Sarah Nieder, the grandson of the Nieders and the Cohens. And Larry and Joanne Cohen were recently with me in Israel right before the pandemic, and in fact, Larry is one of our Live at 5 regulars, and so here we had 3 generations in the room. This is unbelievable. Talk about generations and passing down a legacy. We had Larry, we had Brad, and we had the bar mitzvah boy Isaac, who was with us Friday morning at our SMS program, and celebrating. And we have our Friday morning safe service. Safe and spread out, doors and windows open. Even if we freeze inside, that's the way we do it. We have and we had the bar mitzvah boy putting on his tefillin. It was really, really sweet and wonderful. It was really lovely. I remember Isaac's bris. Frankly, it was a short 13 years ago, and I remember it very well. It's very special to celebrate more simchas in your family. And it was really nice that we had, the Jewish Experience, this building where I am. I know you can't see it because it looks like I'm at Sunset in New York, but really I'm sitting in the Jewish Experience building here. And we have been fortunate to host so many beautiful life cycle events. We've had weddings, we've had funerals, we've had brises, we've had bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, you name it. If it's a life cycle event, we've had a half a dozen of them here. And I never would have thought necessarily it would be a big wedding venue, but small outdoor weddings. We have a nice porch and a nice kitchen, and we're so fortunate to be able to offer our space to people in their lives. Really nice. Mazel tov, mazel tov, mazel tov. I also just wanted to wish, by the way, before we get deeper into the going deeper in the show, I wanted to wish a refuah shlema, a wish for a speedy recovery to one of my friends and students who had a surgery recently, Jack Kunin, and his Hebrew name, just so we should have it, is Yaakov Hanan ben Frida Yoshba, and may have a speedy recovery from his surgery. I think he's recuperating well. I have heard the most amazing story today. One of my buddies in Israel that I speak to every week, we're very close. We've been close for years and years, Avraham Lewis. He told me that he was this close to being famous this morning. Well, how was he this close to being famous? Because he was going for his second round of his vaccine. He already got the first round a couple of weeks ago, and he's going for his second round of the coronavirus vaccine. And it happened to be that right where the clinic where he was going to get his vaccine, a few minutes before he got there, that Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu was going to come so that he could officially shake the hand of the 3 millionth Israeli to get the vaccine. And it happened to be, it was at this clinic right where he was, and he was like a couple of people off. He was this close to being the 3 millionth person in Israel to get the vaccine. Can you imagine? I mean, of all the people they're trying to vaccinate, they're getting close to 50% of the entire thing. Wow. I mean, just wow. We hope that that Colorado and the rest of the United States of America will speed up the process and do likewise and see if they can catch up. But boy, oh boy, is Israel amazing? 3 million people so far have already got it, including him. And there was Bibi on the spot shaking hands. So today, I wanted to share a little thought with you on about the Parsha. Parsha's bow is really kind of a biggie. It's a biggie because it's like a new beginning. And if you're checking out my subtitle today, it was like time for a new start. The Torah, I'll tell you, Rashi, the foremost voice of explanation, helping us to understand what's going on in the Torah. The very, very first comment he makes on the entire Torah is he says, you know what? Why does the Torah actually start with the whole Genesis and creation story? Now, you might think that that's like a really kind of a silly question. Where else are you going to start after all, right? I mean, in the beginning, what better place to start the beginning of the Torah than in the beginning? But Rashi assumed that we're not going to start in the beginning. That's not where the Torah should have started. He seems to point out and to assume that the Torah actually is, and this goes back to what the word Torah means. What does the word Torah actually mean? The word Torah is a word. It's not like a name. It's a word in Hebrew. What does the word Torah mean? The word Torah means instructions. As in, like you get a new dishwasher, like I just got, and you try to install it yourself, which I don't recommend. And you need the instructions to try to figure out how to do that. So you read the instructions. You need the Torah. Or recently, I borrowed someone's car, and before they gave me the keys, they said, "Okay, now let me give you the little thing. This door doesn't open, and this little signal comes on at 30 minutes into your ride, and don't worry about that." And you need to get the instructions for like how this car. You think you know how it works, but you don't really. You need the instructions. So too in life, we need instructions, and God, who gave us life in the first place, was good enough to give us instructions. And that's really the Torah. Torah is the book of instructions. Now, if you assume that, if you start with that preface, now Rashi's question makes sense. Why did the Torah start with the story of creation? The Torah should just be a book of instructions. Just give us the instructions, like lay it out on the line. Tell us what to do. Tell us how to live. Tell us how to succeed, how to prosper, how to thrive, how to enjoy life, how to make the most of the opportunity that you gave us. That's really what the Torah should be. It's instructions. And if so, it shouldn't have started with the story, the narrative of creation, because there's no instructions there. It should have started with this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha should have been, says Rashi, the beginning of the Torah. Because in this week's Parsha, as we're going to see, this is where the narrative portion of the Torah kind of neatly transitions into the instructional part of the Torah. The Torah starts with its instructions in earnest this week. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit, and first, before we do, I'm going to share with you the answer to the question that Rashi asked. I mean, he asked a question. I shouldn't leave you hanging without an answer to that question. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be able to sleep, and you'd come bleary-eyed to Live at 5 tomorrow, and that would all be miserable and probably put nasty things in the comments. And I don't want that. So I want you to sleep well. I want you to have the answer to the question. The answer that Rashi gives to the question. I'm going to give two answers. His answer is like this. Fascinating. Rashi says, you know why the Torah didn't just start with this week's Parsha, why it starts with the narrative of creation? Rashi says, because we needed to be able to tell anyone that's going to accuse us, Jews, of taking the land of Israel, we're going to need to say to them, we didn't take the land of Israel. God, the creator of everything, the land is his. He took it away from its previous occupants, the Canaanites, and he gave it to us. And we're not stealers. We're not land thieves. We're not conquerors. We are the divine recipients of the land of Israel. Now, that may or may not be a convincing argument to everybody, but you know what? We have to know that that's the right answer. And to be quite frank, former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Ayalon, actually did give that answer to an approach and explanation to the United Nations a little less than 2 years ago. So you shouldn't think that Rashi wasn't prescient and that his answer isn't a good answer to give the world. The Israeli ambassador to the United Nations quoted the Torah and gave and fulfilled the prophetic, as it were, words of Rashi. So many, literally millennia later. Well, let's see, Rashi I guess said it about maybe 1,000 years earlier. So that's a long time still. But that's one answer. Why did the Torah have to start its narrative with creation? Not necessarily because the point of the Torah is to tell us stories or to just sort of a history book. It's not a history book. It's not a story book. It's not even a cookbook. It's actually a book of instructions for how to live. And the Torah didn't need to start with the creation story at all. It needed to start with this week's Parsha. Now, I'm going to give you one other quick answer to this, because this is really, I mean, again, this is it's a key to unlocking the beginning of the Torah. What Rashi said is obviously one important idea, and I'm going to give you a second important idea. And this one comes from the Nesivos Sholom, which was a name given to a teacher who was the Rebbe of the Slonim Hasidim. The Hasidim from this European town is known as Slonim, and the Rebbe. One of the Rebbe who wrote a set of books which is called the Nesivos Shalom, which means the paths of peace. It's a beautiful work. It's fascinating. It's relevant. It's beautiful. And he says the most amazing second answer to Rashi's question: why does the Torah start with creation? And I'm just going to tell you this really briefly. And basically, he answers with a line from Pirkei Avos. And Pirkei Avos, in the Ethics of Our Fathers, which we quote all the time in Live at 5 because it's so relevant to us. There it says Derech Eretz Kadma LaTorah. It says that there's something that comes before Torah. Torah is critical, but there's a prerequisite. The prerequisite for it is Derech Eretz, which in this context means character, Menschlichkeit. You have to be a person of fine qualities. You have to be a mensch. You have to be a fine person, a refined person, a person whose character is developed. That you're a fine person. That a person who's not a refined person, they're not really going to be able to understand the Torah, learn the Torah, live the Torah. That's not who it's for. The Torah is for a person who first has worked on themselves and has tried to develop the best superlative qualities, interpersonal qualities, personal qualities, to a person of character, a mensch. The Torah is for a mensch. And a mensch, being a mensch is a prerequisite for Torah. How does one learn what it means to be a mensch? That's what the early narratives of the Torah are for. We learn how to be, how not to be. We emulate our incredible patriarchs and matriarchs, the great things that they learned. And there's some stories of mistakes that we should avoid. And we have negative role models that we should really try not to be like. The early part of the Torah is the part where you see the character and the qualities of character that you're to adopt, which are a prerequisite to you really being a student of Torah. And says the Slonim Rebbe that's why the Torah has all these stories, so much going on. In fact, the entire first book of the Torah, of the 5, and the first 11 chapters of the second book, until you get to this week's Parsha, Parshas Bo, chapter 12 of the book of Exodus, in the middle of, and that's where we're going to pick up. Okay, you got that now? Because now we're developed. We've learned character lessons. We've become great people with the role models of our forefathers and foremothers. And now we're ready for give me the instructions. I'm ready. I can take it. Now I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna internalize. I'm gonna really be able to capitalize on the instructions for life that the Torah really is. As opposed to like people like me who that they throw away the instructions and they try to install the dishwasher themselves, and then they have to call an electrician afterwards, which is what I need to do today. Okay, so don't do that. Don't follow that piece of advice. Read the instructions. And so since what's another word for the instructions? What's another word? Obviously, Torah means instructions, but we break down the book of instructions into a lot of line items, and each one of those line items we call a mitzvah. The word mitzvah is like a specific line item of instructions, Here's what you should do. Here's what you shouldn't do. Do like this, don't do like that. And with all of these instructions, in fact, we have quite a laundry list. There's a mystical idea that if you count them all up, you get to 613. It's a mystical idea because the Torah doesn't number them, and you have to figure out what they are, 1 to 613. Now there are several very, very, very historic lists. Maimonides has a list. Nachmanides has a list. There are other of their relative peers in Jewish scholarship that have lists, and there are a variety of lists, and most of their lists are exactly the same, but there's a nuanced difference. Maybe this one is really 2, and those 2 are really 1, or vice versa. And you actually have lists of 613, and we could go through them one at a time. And frankly, it's a great thing to do. Actually, I remember back at one time, and maybe you were there, at BMH, it was Shavuos. It was at late at night. I think I was giving a class at like 1 to 2:30 in the morning, something like that. And I was doing my best to keep everybody awake, which is not an easy feat. And I decided I'm going to run through the list of all of the positive commandments, all of the thou shalts that are still relevant today. I think there are, if I'm not mistaken, I think that there are 90 some, about 90 some in an hour and a half. So it was a breakneck. I buzzed through them at lightning speed, and just to try to keep everybody awake. Whoops. And I managed to do so. I think a little bit. So I lost a couple, but Anyway, that one could go through the list of the relevant ones today. I say relevant because some you have to live in Israel for, some you have to have the temple for. Some of them are thou shalt, some of them are thou shalt nots. You have a whole list, and they add up to 613. And really this week's parsha is where that all begins. And so we're going to introduce now a new segment for going forward for Live at 5, which is going to be the Mitzvah of the Week. Okay, Mitzvah of the Week, because why not? You got every week in the parsha, you got some mitzvahs, and from here on in. So this week, I want to start at the beginning. It's chapter 12. If you're interested in the book of Exodus, you can look at chapter 12. And right there at the beginning of it, it's in this week's parsha, Parshas Bo, the very first mitzvah that the Jewish people were given as a nation before we even left Egypt, before we even got to Mount Sinai, before the great exodus from Egypt. In Egypt itself, the Jewish people were given a mitzvah. God told Moses to tell the people, I got something for you. Here it is. Number 1, get ready. And the mitzvah was, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. This month that we're in right now shall be for you the first of the months. Okay? It's the mitzvah to sanctify the months. We have like a calendar of months, and we go through them, and we have month number 1. It's a fascinating idea. You're going to tell me that that's the first thing? I would have thought, God, mitzvah number 1. How about love your fellow as yourself? How about don't steal, don't murder? How about, I can think of a couple things that I would have been, God says, the first thing is, you know what he says? God says is, you and me, we're going to be spending a lot of time together. Let's synchronize our calendars. Take out your calendar. Because that's what you do. If you want to meet up with somebody, you want to connect, what do you say? Take out your calendar and let's figure out when we're going to be together. And God says, we're going forward together. This is the beginning. We got to sync up our calendars. And that's the first mitzvah that God gives us as a nation. There are a few that we got as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob before the Jewish people really were a nation. But as we're being born in the Exodus, they're becoming the Jewish people right prior to that. This was literally 2 weeks before the Exodus is going to take place. And it's Rosh Chodesh since the beginning of the month of Nisan. And God says, take out your calendar. Let's get on the same page. Because if we can't sync up together, if we can't figure out where, I'm going to give you a holiday, and I'm going to say I'm going to meet you at the holiday. Our holidays are called meetings. You ever heard the word moed? As in chol hamoed, moed or moadim? The moadim is one of the Hebrew ways we refer to the holidays. A holiday is a moed, and the word moed means a meetup. Long before there was meetup, there was moadim. Meetup, moadim are times of special nature. We can get together with God, and God says, I'm going to meet up with you. But you got to know when that is. Because my holiday is the 15th of the month of Nisan, and you have to know when Nisan is. You have to know when that starts. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sync up calendars. And there's a lot of other beautiful things that could be said about that. I'm just going to give you one more, and then we're going to wrap up this mitzvah of the week. The word for month, chodesh, as in Rosh Chodesh, the head of the month, like Rosh Hashanah is head of the year, Rosh Chodesh is head of the month, and the word Chodesh means month. The word Chodesh is from the word Chadash, which means new. Because if the months are the lunar time and the lunar cycle, and the moon, the lunar cycle, you have the moon waxes and it gets full, and then it wanes and it disappears, and then you have the new moon. So the word new and the word moon, chadash and chodesh, are the same. They're the same root in Hebrew. And what that teaches us is one more very beautiful thing, which is that as much as, we feel like there's a tremendous inertia in our world where you just feel like it just, whatever I was yesterday has just pushed me to where I will be tomorrow. But the reality of the Jewish people is God is saying, the first thing I want to tell you is that we're going to get on the same calendar, and that calendar is moon time, Chodesh time. And the moon time means the time of renewal, that you can take yourself and your life and you can just start, you can reset, you can renew it. That no matter what kind of a schwung you're in, you could snap out of it. No matter what your last month was like, your new month could be new. No matter what 2020 was like, 2021 can be new, and on and on. And the Jewish people's time is renewable time, and our lives are renewable. We're always possible to make a new start. That's another part of HaChodesh Hazel Lachem Rosh Chodashim, the mitzvah of the week, Parshas Bo, as we start a new beginning of where the Torah should have started or could have started, which is right here with instructions. Because, we all want to know how to do it right. We don't want to bumble through life. We don't want to stumble. I think the stumble was the word I was looking for at the beginning of the show. We don't want to stumble. We don't want to schlep. We want to succeed and we want to thrive. And God willing, we'll continue to thrive. Tomorrow on Live at 5, have a healthy day, have a holy day. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to us on on the Jewish Friends YouTube channel, and you'll get updated with all the great new episodes live at 5. See you tomorrow.